Festivals seem to be vibing at the minute. You know, we're here now on the Spice It Up Festival with GasGas range 2024 complete range, motocross and enduro, ranging from 2 strokes, 125s, all the way up to the 450 4-stroke. This morning I've already been out on the motocross track on all of the motocross range, and the bikes absolutely feel amazing. Like, you know, it's surprising on this track. The track it's insane, typical Italian style track. The event itself is vibing, it's just cool. The 2024 GasGas launch was definitely something different this year. The festival style launch was actually, it was pretty epic, to be fair. It was fun. It was good fun to be at. Bikes were always enjoyable to ride, facility, the place, the track. Enduro section was a little bit questionable, if I'm honest, but the full enduro range, in all honesty, was probably my least favourite out of the enduro bikes that I've been testing of late, which I'll touch on in a little bit. But on the motocross track, brilliant, natural terrain track with, you know, with the landscape that just lends itself for fun. You know, in that typical style of a track which Italy offers was a real pleasure to have a rip round. Especially on the bikes. So yeah, for me, my favourite bike across the motocross range was would have been the 350 and also the 250 as well, 252 stroke. The 125, you know, I'll touch on that as well in a little bit, you know, because obviously the fuel injection, that requires a different style and a different way of riding, and I just think that at the present time the 250 can, you know, you can basically ride that bike how it needs to be ridden and the style that it needs to be ridden at, and not have too much problem, especially me as being, you know, old school and a carburettor fan. And that's not to say that I'm not of the new fuel injection, because I am actually. You know, I do see the benefits to fuel injection. On the enduro, the same thing as well. The 350 was my favourite bike to ride. Also the 300 actually was 2-stroke was my favourite bike to ride as well. GasGas I've got a slightly different setup to the Husqvarna range that I tested previously in Norway. I would say that the suspension on the GasGas range definitely needs to be adjusted or tweaked to your riding preference. For me personally, I just felt that the tyre spec and the suspension was a little bit off on the terrain that I was riding and the circuit that I was riding, and it kind of, as a rider, I struggled a little bit to do what I wanted to do and how I wanted to do it. I did ride a modded bike with the upgraded suspension that WP have to offer, and it was night and day difference. So we know that the GasGas range is cheaper, but you will also have to spend some money at that bike to refine it to the way that you'd like it to be. I personally feel anyway. Just to touch base on the enduro bike, you know, and the motocross bike, they all share pretty much the same components now, same frame and so forth, that design. Also as well, the gearbox. Yeah, so I'm pretty sure that the gearbox all share the same gear ratios now as well. Whether that be like the enduro has its own one and the motocross has its own one, I can't quite remember, to be fair, if it was whether it's just one right across the board or whether it's split between enduro and motocross. That in itself was a little bit tricky as well, because you know, as a rider, you require different things. I just felt that the gearing could be tweaked and adjusted. So, you know, whether that be the front sprocket or the rear sprocket, but you're definitely going to have to tweak the sprockets to get what you want from that bike, or from any of the bikes that you ride. The 300 I felt like didn't really require that too much, and the same as the 350 or the 252 stroke. But again, it depends what your requirements are and what you're looking for in a bike. I can only express what I was kind of feeling on the day. The fuel injection, the way that has to be ridden, you have to be within a certain rev range to ride that bike correctly. And when I say that, you always think that you have to have the two-stroke in a reasonable high RPM for it to always pull. Well, that's not the case with the fuel injection. It actually does pull really well from low end, and then you do feel a sign off. So you have to ride within the meat of that power. That's something that you have to feel, and it's something that sometimes is very deceiving, because you think that you're going slower because you're not hearing the bike or the engine working as hard as what you normally would, but actually you're making meterage. So I found that when I rode the 125, so it was deceiving whether I would be quicker on that, or whether I would be better on a carburetor bike, or whether the old carburetor bike was better. If that makes sense, it's one of those things where it has its advantages, but it also has the disadvantages. If you've come from that carburetor era, let's say, then you'll know what I'm talking about. But the new generation, let's be honest, they're all going to be coming off electric if they do ride onto these bikes, and they're not even going to have a clue what I'm talking about. On the motocross side, I felt that the range throughout felt a lot more refined, and I felt a lot more comfortable on the motocross bikes and around that track. I just felt like, yes, we had somebody that would tweak the bikes that while we were there, and we could set up the suspension, but we had a lot of bikes to ride throughout the day. And if you're spending too much time just on one model getting it set up right, which I know if you set the sag, I'm going to get a different feel, but I'd like to think that I've got enough experience now to know, what bike's going to feel, or whether I feel comfortable on it. I know what the benefits are of setting the sag. I know what the benefits are of, speeding up the compression, slowing it down, hardening up the compression, so forth. High speed, low speed. For me, I was just riding the bike and just trying to give it a quick overall view and how I felt and how comfortable I was when I was on the bikes. The motocross range, I felt pretty comfortable on all of the range throughout. Again, the enduro I didn't. I just felt like that was one of the things where I'm like, oh, I need to spend some time here, like to get myself comfortable. And the GasGas, they do seem to be on point regards and price, but there is a reason for that. So the components are a little bit not of a higher grade or a higher spec, let's say. Tyres for me definitely are important on a manufacturer's launch, because you really do get a feel for for the bike with a good tyre on. And I just felt on the motocross range, actually, that wasn't quite the case. The terrain had been ripped, watered. It was groomed to a good standard. On the enduro side, it's just pretty much just left. You go into a field, you're on off-camber bank, you've got rock, and just then at that point I was like, oh, yeah, I'm not too comfortable with the tyres here, which is strange, because I've never really, I'm not one to mention that one too much. I do have to say the GasGas image and branding is absolutely cool as you like. I'm definitely bought in when you look at the bikes and you see their image and you're just like, yeah, it just looks cool. It really does look cool, and I love the image. I love that. It's something that you can invest into. And the bikes are on price point, as you've mentioned. If I was to have kind of an enduro bike, I definitely would be looking straight away at gearing, suspension and the tyres. And I know that I would be more than happy once I've got that dialed in with that bike, and I wouldn't want for nothing else. On the motocross side, again, I would have to kind of address them areas again. But once the bike is sorted, then you have definitely got a trick machine, that's for certain.